Hey everybody, welcome to the Lighthouse Church Sermon Broadcast. The title of today's message is Jesus is Still in Charge. The COVID-19 pandemic has been a dramatic experience for most of us and a traumatic experience for many of us. We've seen runaway infections and deaths, with increasing numbers being reported daily. Governments have declared a state of emergency and lockdown. New laws have come into play. New authorities have come into play. It's been extremely unsettling. So much has changed so quickly. And things keep on changing. Today's rules are not the same as yesterday's rules. Today's plans are not the same as yesterday's plans. Yesterday we were hearing from one leader. Today we're hearing a different voice. There's so many voices, so many experts. It's so confusing sometimes. All of this has resulted in enormous insecurity. We are out of control. We have no idea what our future holds. It's also resulted in widespread confusion. We don't know what to do. We don't know who to listen to, as we wonder what's going on and who do we believe. But you know what? Some things have not changed. Jesus is still in charge, and Jesus has not changed. Before he ascended to heaven, the risen Jesus said this to his disciples. It's recorded in Matthew chapter 28, verse 18. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Since that day, many emperors, kings, governments, generals have risen and fallen. Rulers and rules are forever changing, but Jesus remains in charge. So with all the insecurity and confusion around us, we need to get this truth firmly settled in our hearts and in our minds. The unchanging rule of Jesus brings security in place of insecurity. It brings clarity in place of confusion. We can feel secure in spite of seemingly out of control situations, because we know that Jesus rules over it all. And we can have clarity in spite of all the confusion and confusing voices, because the words of Jesus always stand. So let's take a closer look today at these two things. First, our security. When Jesus led his disciples, he led them into many situations where they were completely out of their depth, sometimes literally. In these situations, he demonstrated his authority over all of our circumstances. Here's one example, recorded in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along, just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat, so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." The disciples found themselves in a situation that was both terrifying and completely out of their control. They were in the middle of a furious storm with powerful waves washing over the boat. At any moment, the boat could fill up with water and possibly sink. At any moment, a big wave could wash them overboard. They could bail water out as fast as they could, but the waves were bigger than their buckets. They could hold on to the boat for dear life, but the waves were powerful and relentless. And Jesus? Well, he did nothing. He slipped through the crisis. Eventually, the panicking disciples woke him. "Don't you care if we drown?" You may have felt like this recently. Your world is out of control. It's been like that for some time now. You wonder, does Jesus care? Now, may I make an observation here? Jesus was in the same boat as the disciples. He was with them. And he was unconcerned about the storm. I don't know, but I suspect that if they had not woken Jesus, they would have made it through the storm and arrived safely on shore. But it was good that they woke Jesus, because he then demonstrated his authority over nature. The disciples were completely out of control, but Jesus was completely in control. Jesus was not at all intimidated by this furious storm. Actually, we see that the storm was intimidated by Jesus. So here's my conclusion from this account. If we know that Jesus is in control over our circumstances, we can feel secure. He's in the boat with us. He's in charge of the weather. We're going to be fine. Here's another out-of-control situation. John chapter 6, verses 16 to 21. When evening came, his disciples went down to the lake, where they got onto a boat and set off across the lake for Capernaum. By now it was dark, and Jesus had not yet joined them. A strong wind was blowing, and the waters grew rough. When they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus approaching the boat, walking on the water, and they were frightened. But he said to them, "It is I, don't be afraid." Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading. This time Jesus was not in their boat when the storm came up. Then he joined them, but in a way that shocked them. He walked on the waves. Now, our knowledge and their knowledge tells us that water can't support the weight of a man. We sink or we swim. These are laws of science. But Jesus has authority over the laws of science. If he commands the water to support him, it will support him. Sometimes we're in a situation where all of our knowledge and all of our understanding says to us that we are proverbially sunk. We are done. But Jesus has authority, even over the laws of science. Jesus is not ruled by science. He rules over science. One last situation. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all record a time when Jesus was preaching to a crowd of over 5,000 people in a remote place. Then Jesus told his disciples to feed the crowd. They didn't need to be accountants to work it out that this was impossible. But one of them did the sums and he confirmed it. But then Jesus took the little that they had and miraculously multiplied it, so that there were leftovers after everyone had eaten. Yeah, sometimes we clearly do not have what we need. Not enough money, not enough food, not enough helpers, not enough of whatever it is that we need. But Jesus is not ruled by arithmetic. Remember, he rules over everything. In his hands, our not enough becomes more than enough. I hope these lessons encourage you. You may feel as if your boat is sinking. You may feel as if Jesus is not doing what he should, that he's not calming your storm. Or you may feel as if Jesus is doing what he should not do. He's putting you in an absolutely impossible situation. We need to remember, Jesus rules over everything, over nature, over science, over arithmetic. Jesus makes dangerous safe. He makes impossible possible. He makes not enough more than enough. So if Jesus is ruling over your life, you can feel absolutely secure, regardless of how terrifying or impossible your circumstances may look. The second implication is that Jesus brings clarity into our confusion. We can have clarity about what is right because the words of Jesus always stand. It is frightening to see how society can fall apart in a crisis. In South Africa, because the sale of liquor and tobacco was declared illegal over lockdown, some liquor stores were looted. The sale of illegal cigarettes has flourished. Some people refused to obey the lockdown laws because they regarded them as unfair. Evidently, these people felt that their actions were right. They were justifiable because of the circumstances. So we can find ourselves in a very confusing situation. The rulers are changing the rules. Some citizens are challenging the rules. Some are defying the rules. Some are even inventing new rules. What is right and wrong appears to be up for debate. But if Jesus is Lord, and he is, if he has all authority, and he does, then his word stands. So if Jesus says something is right or wrong, then it is right or wrong. In or out of lockdown, in fair weather and in stormy weather. If he commands us to do something, then we must do it, in or out of lockdown, in fair weather and in stormy weather. As followers of Jesus, we don't need to be confused about what is right or wrong, or what we should do. He has taught us how to live, and his ways stand, always. I'm reminded of an expression, fair weather Christians. These are people who are full of enthusiasm for Jesus and his ways and his mission when things are going well. But when things go wrong, they change their minds. They're no longer so in love with Jesus. They're no longer inclined to do his will. I'm also reminded of fair weather preachers. They say, invite Jesus into your life and he will make your life wonderful. People respond to this message, but no surprises here. When things go wrong, they walk away. Friends, we need to understand this. The rule of Jesus is not situational. His commands stand in good times and in bad times. He led his disciples through easy times and through difficult times. The church was born in very difficult times. And Jesus did not promise us a life without trouble. In fact, he promised us trouble. Listen to his words recorded in John 16, verse 33. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Jesus teaches us how to live, and he requires obedience. He requires us to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. Listen to his words recorded in Luke chapter 6, verses 46 to 49. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? As for everyone who comes to me and hears my words and puts them into practice, I will show you what they are like. They are like a man building a house. who dug down deep and laid the foundation on rock. When a flood came, the torrent struck that house, but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not put them into practice is like a man who built his house on the ground without a foundation. The moment the torrent struck that house, it collapsed, and its destruction was complete. I know that it's not always easy to follow Jesus. But when we do so, we find that obedience is not just the right thing to do, but it's actually the best thing that we can do. If we do what Jesus commands and live the ways that he teaches, we will find that our life actually becomes rock solid. When the floods come, and they come, we do not fall apart. We stand firm. So let's hear these words of Jesus. Floods will come. Do you want your house to stay standing? Then hear Jesus' words and put them into practice. Do you want to stand strong through the trauma, the trials, and the dangers of this pandemic? Then hear Jesus' words and put them into practice. This does not mean that our problems will go away. Our storms will come, but we will get through them. Jesus will lead us through them. So let's keep on following Jesus. Let's keep reading his words. Let's allow them to bring clarity amidst the confusion. Let's keep learning his ways and putting them into practice. This is always the right thing to do, and it is always the best thing to do, even in the most difficult and confusing times. What lies ahead for us? I think there'll be more surprises, more challenges, more out of control situations, more conflicting voices. But because Jesus is always in charge, we can navigate these stormy waters with security and clarity. We can live with security because we know that Jesus is always in control. We can live with clarity because we know that his ways are always right. So we trust him and we obey him, and he will lead us through. May Jesus lead us through this time with security and clarity as we trust him and obey him. Amen.